Hello, and welcome to some Derps Talk About Games. I'm your co-host, Mango.
And I am your co-host, Buddy. Today we're going to be finishing up our conversation about the Warlord that we started last week. But before that, Mango, if you had a piece of fan mail
Well,
to read.
I mean, first of all, I think we need to say that we also have our special guest co-host, Mark, on the show, friend of the show.
Oh, right, yes. I
Say
don't
hi,
know
Mark.
Hi,
if I
everyone.
announced that. I'm very good at this job.
And before
Hi,
I go
everyone.
into our first fan letter, Buddy, why don't you tell the folks at home what we do on this podcast?
Well, it's pretty simple, Mango and Mark, both of you guys. We talk about games.
All right, so normally this is where we go into the stuff where we talk about our week, and we are going to do that, but I also wanted to mention we got our first piece of fan mail from a mysterious fan. I believe his name is Aaron. And he says, hi, Mango and Buddy. I often lose track of when either of your campaigns are starting, so I was wondering if you could post on Twitter when one of your D&D Pathfinder games or streams is about to start. Also, what if during your weekly roundups, you went over what happened plot-wise in your favorite moments from this week's session. Awesome show, Aaron. First of all, thanks for the love, Aaron. We do this because we love it, and we're glad that somebody else appreciates it too. But second of all, I think that's a really excellent idea. And it's pretty good right now because we have the GM for one of the campaigns on the show with us, in the form of Mark. So we can do this. I think this is a great idea. So
I agree. I will also make a point of tweeting out our start times. A lot of the times we do a lot of kind of scheduling that behind the scenes that you guys might not necessarily see. So this stream would start up at a weird time, but I feel like tweeting it out at the appropriate, to just let everyone know is probably a great way to handle that.
Yeah. So thanks for the excellent suggestion. So let's jump right into it. Let's start with Rise of the Rune Lords for this week. It was actually last week, but conveniently we don't have to, we can just go right into it. So oh man, Mark, you want to set the scene a little bit for what happened last week?
So basically, the players found the source of this huge conspiracy that's been gripping the city they've been adventuring in. And then they go kill her, and the battle site eventually explodes due to actions of the players, and rocks fall, and she got killed by them.
That was that was pretty crazy. I think my expectation for the fight was thoroughly kind of dispelled as soon as we got into the tower and it had all of this phlogiston stuff. I was expecting a kind of very, sort of prototypical climb the tower, get to, beat a bunch of mooks, get to the top, fight the boss at the top of the tower kind of thing. And that is not how it went at all.
No, I tried to make the encounter area very flexible, so as written in the adventure path, that is supposed to be what happens. You climb the tower, you fight the boss at the top, and that's kind of the end-all to be-all. But what I did is, because a bunch of my players had already seen that particular set of encounters before, is I kind of merged it into this, continuous battle site where where the players were allowed to pick their engagement wherever they chose. And I kind of expanded on that by giving each of the characters a different kind of combat option they could pursue, in addition to just, getting on the boss and hitting them really hard.
I think the single biggest change you made, though, which probably had the biggest effect in our game, is you filled the bottom of the tower with explosive phlogiston, which is not in the original adventure path, as I would point out.
Yeah, that was. I'm a big fan of phlogiston, but I haven't really used it all that much in this campaign. I kind of like this kind of, and this is kind of weird headcanon that I think about all the time because I'm a theater kid like this. Kambe likes using phlogiston and likes using the environment in that kind of way because to him he's not a very good
Kenzo?
one-on-one or no Kambe.
Oh, okay.
From Endless Winter. Because, he's not a very good fighter one-on-one, right? And he feels like he needs he kind of needs the help from being an aware combatant in the environment in order to do good. But Kenzo's the opposite, right? Kenzo's really good at one-on-one, but he's super paranoid about drawing attention to himself. So the idea to, blow up the entire tower is just not something that Kenzo would really be thinking about because he's very focused on being discreet and doesn't feel like he needs the kind of advantages that fighting in the environment, come from.
So I'm actually really interested to hear how, as players, you guys interacted with the encounter and how you guys felt about it and what you thought in terms of the execution, because it was I was a little worried when I was designing it about options paralysis, but I think people kind of executed on that fairly well for the most part.
Yeah, we talked a little bit about this off cast, and I actually think that this makes a pretty good topic for a future cast. So, a little foreshadowing for the dear listeners out there. But the mechanics of the boss, having 2 rounds and being focused on illusion magic and enchantment magic, which kind of created a lot of like. It created a little bit of a dynamic where, in order for the boss to be successful, she needed to constantly be CCing the party to balance out the action economy. And I think that is good. Like that's good design in my head for how to handle that kind of boss fight. But it is one of those things where you run the risk of really frustrating players, because I feel like players just hate to get crowd controlled in general.
Yeah. On top of that, I agree with Buddy. I think it's good. It's good design. I think that one of the specific weaknesses of letting a boss act twice in a round are things like, specifically for this boss, actually, there aren't many spells with this type of thing, but some of the spells that the psionics that this boss used were like, oh well, the effect only lasts for a round if you save, which is normally kind of like, well, it's okay for whatever else is happening in the fight. But by the time her turn comes back around, when she can really take advantage of it, it's already worn off. That feels like a real save. This happened to my character, which is kind of why it stuck out in my mind, if you can't tell. But the fact that she can act again in the round, when I kind of felt like some of my saves that were saves weren't really saves. If that makes sense. It's like saves like 4 times in a row.
I definitely agree with that to a certain extent, but I do think that there are bigger. If you were to ask me to weigh the pros and cons of allowing a boss to act twice in a round, that would certainly be in the con pile. But I kind of do think the pros outweigh it. Like, I think that
no, absolutely,
it is good design, as long as you work around it, right? Like, I don't think every game ever should have it, but it is a very viable solution to kind of the boss fight problem.
No, I agree 110%. I just think that that's a thing to keep into consideration, a thing to maybe try and, if you're gonna put those types of homebrews in, to try and homebrew around that as well. But yeah, sorry, Mark, can go on.
Oh, well, I was actually using the Agile Mythic template as a way of giving her a second action and giving her some speed in case you guys did take the fight to the top of the tower. So she has a climb speed, so she can kind of dip in and out around the crown of this structure,
right,
and sort of pick and choose her engagement points, which I thought was...
I definitely feel that.
So, but on top of that, I think the thing that I was trying to execute on was giving the play, avoiding crowd controlling the entire party, and the 2 rounds was a way of switching back and forth between who she was locking down to allow the other half of the party or whatever to deal with her in kind of the intervening span. So it became, it's a little oppressive, but I think in terms of bosses you fight once like that, I feel that was a better execution on, a very unique boss fight mechanic, as opposed to some of the other ones that I've done with illusion and hiding and stealth bosses.
Right, but there's also, I see what you're saying about crowd controlling the players and having the ability to do that or whatever, but a lot of crowd control is longer than 1 round anyway.
Oh,
hypothetically speaking, she could have CC'd the entire party if she hit each individual of us with oppressive fear or omniaric fear. I was CC'd for 4 turns by that. And so it is entirely possible for a boss like that to completely lock down the entire party.
Yeah, I think CC against players is something that gets its own cast, right? How to deal with that.
Right.
I think it's a very
boss mechanics.
hard problem to deal
with.
with.
I think there's a lot in there that we could talk about. But anyway, the other game that we played this week was Iron Gods. Which was run on Tuesday, and we're basically just in the middle of this dungeon crawl where we keep moving forward, clearing a couple of runes for 3 or 4 hours, and then calling it a night. This week, though, the best fight was we were in the recreation area of the starship, and there were a bunch of sparring robots, and as soon as we entered the room, they all said, "Show me your moves!" And the GM turned on the
Mute City.
Mute City, and we all fought one-on-one with our Cap Falcons. I was actually really sad because I really want you to my character's a brawler. Obviously, I do the very closest thing to a Falcon Punch in the entire game, and I was really looking forward to my round. And then I one-shot my Captain Falcon, and we moved on. And I was like, "Oh, it's so anticlimactic!"
I think that's another thing to talk about in a future cast is just the kind of the rocket tag nature of high-level play, because Felox is everyone was oh. This multi-class is so dumb, and then it's we hit level 10 or whatever, and I'm just one-shotting people.
I think a lot of this is because the GM of that game, to reference an earlier podcast of ours, the GM of
is
that
our
game,
friend Nick,
is ridiculously raw. Mango is very raw, but I feel Nick is the most blatant example of raw that you guys would be able to see by watching our games and everything. And we have all collectively min-maxed our characters pretty hard because he's told us basically that he maxes out the HP values on everything we fight, and we're still clearing encounters without all that much trouble.
Except for the one with the ghosts, in which case it was surprise.
Yeah, but that was something that addressed kind of a specific deficiency in our party, which is ability to hit incorporeal. And I think you're right, Mark, though, that this kind of speaks to a problem with very high level Pathfinders, that the defenses don't scale as much as the attacks do, and it's kind of big huge numbers get thrown around. I think it's hard as a GM to design an encounter that kind of hits in my Rune Lords campaign, which is not streamed. It's held in real life. I've had this problem too, where the players aren't that high level. They're 8 or 9, I think, but they still I've been, my first attempt was just throwing on some extra health, and at a point it's just well, then they spend 5 rounds beating on the sack of HP instead of 2. It's not actually that much more interesting.
To be honest, this kind of sounds like it's getting into its own cast territory. But
yeah.
I think a big help in that situation are the attunement bonuses from items. I think one of the big problems with the Iron Gods version of this is that not only are all items open to be bought and sold, right? But we also have taken the item creation feats, which I think are just ridiculously broken. So we've really been able to maximize our gold to the point where it's almost impossible for us to miss on a bulk of our attacks going up against enemies.
Yeah, I think weirdly item creation feats, the trade-off is supposed to be you're trading out a feat for them, so you get that item bonus. But what happens is that item creation feats scale with party size really well, right?
Yeah,
we've got a 5-man party, and so we get 5 times the bonus of the item creation feat, whereas a standard 4-man party or an underpowered 3-man party isn't going to be as well served by that item creation feat, because that's a third of their, that's one character's feats, which is a third of the feats instead of a fifth of the feats, right? But yeah, you're probably right. That could probably go into its own cast. But just for some memorable moments, there was the Captain Falcon fight. I personally love my character could turn into an Andro Sphinx. And I had a couple of times where
you say that as if people understand what that means. Yeah. Do you all of the viewers just happen to offhand know what an Andro Sphinx is?
So my character's a Blood Rager, and the Arcane 16th level power, which I got early because of an item, lets you cast Beast Shape 4 on yourself. And an Andro Sphinx is essentially a Sphinx, and he's got Pounce and 2 claws and a grab, and he can speak so I can still cast spells while I'm doing it. And he kind of just grabs things and tears it apart. And I always love imagining on these really big hits where the grabs are also really great. It's just holding the person up in the air and tearing it in half. And that's always fun for me, given that my character is essentially a full attack character, and he only rolls twice because he's using natural attacks. But also we had this I think the Pulse Pounder was pretty great. So there's this big robot, which is
yeah, I forgot about that.
It's a techno cannon golem, and one of our friends' characters, Muher, can take control of robots. So he does that, turns it into a fleshy tech cannon golem, and then gets it stolen back from him. And just go back and forth. I thought that engaged with that kind of mind picture was really, really fun, and I really enjoyed that. What about you guys? You guys have any other memorable moments from this week's Iron Gods?
I think the Captain Falcon fight was definitely far and away my favorite part, just because it was, it's a really interesting encounter on its own, but Nick really kind of took it home, and that was great.
Yeah. It was a pretty good representation of what this whole campaign has been like.
Yeah. It's basically one giant 80s metal album.
Yeah.
That's literally the best way to describe Iron Gods. It's you got your evil space wizards, you got your tech guns, you got your mutation. It's like Fallout Numeria. Anyway.
Yeah. Anyway,
on to just if we want to quickly do our normal weeks in video games. I'll go first. I played some Undertale. That game's neat. I look forward to playing more of it. It's funny. I don't know if it's as good as everybody wants. Everybody's like, oh, it's like the second coming of Jesus Christ. And I don't know if it's that good, but it's pretty good. So I'll continue to play that critically acclaimed game. And I also played some of the Street Fighter V beta this weekend. And Zangief's in it, and I'm loving the Geef. I'm not very good because I've never been very good, but I'm liking the changes they made to Zangief. He's grappling everybody like he does. He's got a lot more options to move through fireballs. And so that's been my week in video games. Buddy, did you ever get around to playing any of the Street Fighter V beta?
I did not get around to playing. I haven't even installed it yet, but I guess I probably should because I promised you that I would.
It expires tonight.
Yeah, I've been playing a shotgun blast of different games. I'd resubbed into World of Warcraft, and I've been playing with Mark, obviously. I've been playing the Mass Effect 3 multiplayer with our friends because I love that game so much. Oh, it's so fun. And then I've been continuing this redone playthrough on Mass Effect 1, which I'll probably talk about that a little bit next week. The last game that I've been playing, which is escaping my mind. The other game I've been playing is the Telltale. I've been finishing the Telltale Game of Thrones, which I will also talk about next week probably. Because it's one of those things where I played the first episode months and months and months ago, and I love that game. I love these Telltale games. They're so good. They're just so great. But
are they actually games?
Yes. God, man, we're teasing all of the future podcasts today.
For those of you at home, this is just a reference to the fact that I think a lot of the Telltale games are not actually video games. I think a part of them are, but we have an
that's why
argument
we only
going back
bring
and
Mark
forth.
on for tabletop casts.
Exactly.
No, that'll be a real cast. I think that's an important cast to have.
No, it is.
Jokes
aside,
terms.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I've been so those are the games I'm playing. I'm trying to finish stuff out because it's the end of the year or whatever, and I don't want to let it drag, I guess.
Fair enough. Mark, what have you been up to this week in video games?
Playing, the usual World of Warcraft, and right now I'm just sort of waiting on a new TV. Then I'm gonna probably dig in really hard in Bloodborne.
Oof. Exciting.
So, it's simple, but it brings me joy. So
I don't know if I'd call Bloodborne simple. Bloodborne's a pretty hardcore game. I played that game a while ago, and I got past the second boss, and then I was like, I'm tired.
I love that shit though. My god.
No, absolutely.
That's
I agree.
That show in my D&D games? Maybe a little bit, but.
All right. I remember beating the second boss and being like, ugh. There's 37 more of these. Might as well quit while I'm ahead.
Anyway, so to get into the actual meat of today's episode, we're going to be continuing with the Warlord, which we started last week. To any first-time listeners or people that didn't listen to last week's episode, I highly recommend going back and listening to, what was it, episode 9 or whatever,
10.
Maybe episode 10. Episode 10, which is the Warlord Part 1. We talk about where I came up with the idea and all of that kind of stuff, and dealt with the base, the kind of like the base stats, and the bulk of the Warlord class, which are these orders. In the description, you'll find a link to 2 versions of the Warlord. The Warlord as it is currently, which is, me going back and editing the class after today's cast. And you will also find a time capsule version of the Warlord, which is the exact same Warlord stats that we are talking about today. But yeah, I guess we should just get right into it. Besides orders...
I was going to say, just to lay out the roadmap, we're going to go through the rest of the class. We stopped at the end of orders last time. We're going to go through the rest of the class. And then after that, we're probably going to go back to orders because, 1, we want Mark's input on it, and 2, because it also had a lot of design space left in it, things to think about to maybe balance that a little bit more.
Yeah, I've definitely got a lot of thoughts that I want to bounce off you guys.
Yeah, and if we finish out talking about orders, then we're going to move on to archetypes and potential feats and stuff like that. But yeah, to go on, I think the next feature is what, Combat Medic, buddy?
Yeah, Combat Medic is the last feature that Warlords get at level 1. It basically reads, it's pretty straightforward. A Warlord adds half his character level to any heal check he makes. And he can use the Treat Deadly Wounds action, which is in the heal skill, without taking a penalty for lacking a healing kit. Normally, you can't make that without using a healing kit. And he, instead of using his Wisdom modifier, instead he uses his Charisma modifier. On top of that, at 5th level, the Warlord receives the signature skill Heal as a bonus feat. Signature skill coming, of course, from Pathfinder Unchained, which kind of powers up his ability to treat deadly wounds for the party. I'm sure that you guys see exactly what I'm doing with this. The Warlord isn't a healer, right? And he can't heal the way that a cleric can with spells, or like a cleric or a bard or whoever, using spells. So I thought it was important that even though, he has this temporary hit point stuff with Rally, with Into the Fray, I thought it was important that after a fight was over, he could at least, patch people up with first aid in order to get them, some of the HP that these other support classes would have been able to. But yeah, I don't know. What do you guys think?
I think it's a really neat implementation. I think the feature as written is a little wordy in the sense that, I think you should just give them signature skill Heal as a bonus feat, no matter if they qualify for it or not, and call it a day. But there's also a Combat Medic teamwork feat, I think, which is you can use it as a standard action. So maybe working that in there somehow too, as
so
part
to
of
be
a
clear,
progression
they
of that.
do receive signature skill Heal as a bonus feat, regardless of the prerequisites. But the signature skill only triggers if they have enough ranks, right? So this is if a level 10 Warlord hasn't put any ranks into Heal, he still gets that
the benefit just right,
naturally.
But just not as much. Okay,
yeah,
I see. That's interesting. So as far as things go, I think Squad Tactics, we were mentioning in the precast that it's kind of a bad name, but I don't think it's, I think it's good for what, it's exactly what it says on the tin. It's like the Inquisitor's solo tactics, but reversed.
Well yeah, so, are we moving on? So just for a little bit of formatting, Mark, I think we're going to go feature by feature. I think,
okay.
But I think Buddy wants to we want to read out the features feat by feat, but if I don't really have anything to say about Combat Medic. I think it's pretty good as written, and then we can kind of move on to the next thing.
So, yeah, fair enough. I think I agree. Combat Medic is pretty straightforward. I don't really see it coming out of the class anytime soon. Anyway,
just one quick thing on it. Do you intend for Combat Medic to let the Warlord use his Charisma modifier on the skill as well, or just on the Deadly Wounds aspect?
Just on the Deadly Wounds aspect, because that phrasing is tied to The only time that hit points get restored with a bonus from the charisma modifier, if I'm understanding the heal skill correctly, is when you're using the treat deadly wounds action. So it's the only time that really applies. In fact, actually, that was the reason that I added certain characters have this thing, like they add half their class. Mesmerists, that garbage class, for instance, add half his character level to every bluff check. I just put that in there because obviously warlords are not built to be wisdom focused, but I do want them to be, heal is going to be, that's something that they should reasonably perform pretty well at.
All right, makes sense to me.
Cool. Anyway, so Squad Tactics is the second level ability. Like Mark said, it's pretty straightforward. It is the reverse of Solo Tactics for an Inquisitor. An Inquisitor Solo Tactics obviously allow them to take a teamwork feat and treat all of their allies as if they had that teamwork feat for the purposes of triggering the teamwork feat. This is the opposite. A Warlord is treated as having a teamwork feat for any ally within 30 yards of him that has a teamwork feat. So if my rogue has outflank and I'm a warlord, I'm treated as having that outflank for my rogue. What I like about the reason I implemented it this way is because I think the Cavalier ability Tactician is very good, and it's very strong, and I really wanted to put that in the Warlord, but I actually didn't like it from the perspective of it kind of violated one of my rules almost, as it's this, it's the Warlord gives out this aura, which I wasn't a big fan of. Also, I didn't like the way that the action economy worked. It's another huge action sink because in order to trigger it, you have to use a standard action. And of course, it's also really, really, powerful. So I was trying to think of what's a way that I could flavor in teamwork feats for a Warlord and make people think about teamwork feats with regards to the Warlord without actually, pumping up, putting in a high power class feature in there, and Squad Tactics is kind of that version. Honestly, the Warlord doesn't really gain. It's low power because the Warlord is giving his benefit to an ally, right? Like what this really does is suggest to other members of the party, hey, I can take a teamwork feat, and it's fine because the Warlord always counts as having that active.
Yeah, no, I definitely think that it's a good compromise. I like the way it's implemented. I think the full Tactician Warlord is kind of like an archetype, like because you have that for several. There's like there's a couple classes with options like that. I think it's I remember looking at it for the first time and being like, that's really clever. I really like that. So. Because
thank you. warms my heart.
So honestly, one of my problems with teamwork feats as a system is that they don't ever seem powerful enough, and for like a lot of those feats that are like that seem to be like complement like somebody in melee and somebody at range are complementing each other. They like both people need to have that feat, and one character always doesn't need you
never want to give God, what is it? I can't remember the names of them.
Yeah, there's one that's like gives you a bonus, like a combined arms type of bonus for when being in melee and being ranged. But the prerequisite is point blank shot, and you both need to take this feat. So that's a 2 feat sync for your melee character, just to activate it for your ranged character,
right.
Which is just kind of like
I
garbage.
think a way to like redo teamwork feats maybe is just to have it so like there's categories of teamwork feats rather than just like you need 2 copies of outflank to do this. Instead, if it was like you need outflank and or ranged flank or something like that.
Yeah,
and if you
or complementing teamwork feats, right? Like one person gets ranged and one person gets melee, and
to be honest, I always want from teamwork feats is I want a teamwork feat like outflank to be to have like a solo version where it's functioning at like 25% power, 50% power, and then it powers into its full version if somebody else has it, so that it's never quite a dead feat, you know what I mean? And like you can take it at mismatched levels, right? So if your rogue has an open feat at level 3 and your fighter at level 5, the rogue can just take outflank and he's still gaining a little bit of a benefit between those other levels. I feel like that's like the proper implementation. But that's obviously pretty tough to design around.
I also feel like Teamwork Feats could be their own cast on their own.
Right. Yeah.
Man, God, we need to start writing these down.
I'm doing that already.
Fair enough. But yeah, so that was kind of the genesis behind Squad Tactics. I want to make a better name for it, but besides that,
I think Squad Tactics is actually pretty good, just because it kind of riffs on Solo Tactics or Tactician.
I guess it does. I didn't really think about it that way, but I don't know. I guess 3 weeks ago, Buddy was very smart about the name. I intended that reference.
I think that of all of your names in this class, Squad Tactics is probably the one that needs the least amount of work.
Really? Damn. Fine. Be that way.
Yeah, like what ambush.
Yeah, the order names.
That's the target.
The problem with the order names is
I inspire competence.
I want them to be something that like a warlord could actually. So for instance, this is going to be tangential, but when they were designing Vi in League of Legends, they had a whole bunch of kits, and the lead designer kept throwing out kits because he wanted to make sure that every name and every ability was a punch, right? All of Vi's abilities, denting blows, vault breaker, assault and bat. They're all describing punches, because that's what she's about, and it's the same thing with the Warlord, right? I want all of these names to be, it's a short, concise thing that the Warlord literally tells a teammate to do, right? He's literally yelling move or strike or rally, right? But then when you get into like having to write out 20 different names for this stuff, like
that's how you get the advantage on somebody. You yell out ambush while you're ambushing them. That's kind of how you yell out assassinate while you assassinate someone.
Okay, Mango, fine.
Yeah,
whatever.
It just amuses me.
My idealism is undeterred by your pragmatic.
Ambush in particular amuses me, because I'm just imagining a bunch of people yelling ambush while they jump out of the bushes.
I think that's really cool. Like the imagery there, though, it's silly, but it's fun. Like that's kind of like you really get kind of a like. There's a little bit of cheesiness to the class, and I think it's done well, though. Like, in that sense of, like, this is your, Captain America style, like, leader, which I like.
I mean, that's definitely kind of the point. Anyway, the next ability that you unlock at level 4 are presences. Presences are kind of the other big ticket class feature with orders, so I imagine we're going to talk about them a while. Oh my god, this is just a giant wall of text. Okay, this is what a presence is. As a swift action, a warlord... so at level 4, he chooses one of 5 different presences that we'll talk about in a minute, and then he learns a new one every 4 levels thereafter. When a warlord has 2 or more presences, he can swap between them as a swift action. And then, of course, the warlord can enter a presence when he's not in one as a swift action, but only in combat, right? So it's kind of like a style where you have to enter combat and then declare the swift action on your first turn in order to get into the presence.
What about making presences like you can make them as part of an initiative check as well? I think that might be good to kind of free up the action economy instead of having to require that first round swift action go into the presence.
Also, I feel whatever about that, to be honest.
It's also
that's
something.
A fine change. I don't mind it.
It's also something to put up against what like the start, like Into the Fray or any of the other starting orders. Like, you have to make that tactical choice there, whether or not you want to enter a presence or whether you want to
use one of the like quick orders kind of thing.
I think that's a good power trade-off there.
That is actually kind of interesting. Okay, yeah. But just to explain the rest of what this happens, a presence, while in a presence, a warlord has an ability called Empower that'll probably be changed to something else, which he can use as a standard action. Empowering an ally grants them it grants them a mechanical benefit for, generally speaking, 1 roll. Whenever that ally takes the indicated action, or it lasts until the turn, kind of thing. And On top of that, anytime a warlord in a presence issues an order to an ally, the ally gains the benefit of the warlord's presence, right? So if I have, Guardian Presence, which increases an ally's AC, and I use Strike on one of my allies, they take the strike, but they also get the benefit of that AC bonus until the first attack is rolled against them.
I really like that. I think it adds a lot of little micromanagement to the class, but I think it also adds a good layer of complexity compared to playing a cleric or something like that, whereas their complexity comes from managing their spells, but I think this is a lot more interesting in terms of like repetitive implementation.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. Also, the other thing about presences is presences are keyed off of the amount of command in your command pool. The potency of a presence is going to be very high while you have a lot of command in your command pool, and low when you have low command in your command pool. If you ever drop to 0, you drop out of your presence as well by necessity. Even if you gain if you gain command back, you don't opt back into the presence, or you have to, opt back into the presence as, a swift action like we talked about. And these are the 5 presences. The first one is Guardian Presence.
Well, let's go presence by presence and discuss them individually.
Okay.
All right.
So Guardian Presence is you can empower to AC, right? So you get the potency. This is going to be the potency for all of them, is equal to the remaining command points in the Warlord's command pool, and the bonus is consumed on the first attack against the allies' AC. This is true of all of these, right? It's not a bonus that's going to stay up for the full turn. Only against the first attack they would suffer. So yeah, that's Guardian Presence. What do you? How do we feel?
So, I think this is very, very powerful, especially early in the game. Like, I think, I think like a level 4 application of this, because the skirmisher, or not the skirmisher, the present, like the command pool is a relatively static number. At like what is probably like 4 or 5 point bonus at 4th level is gonna be pretty powerful. It's gonna be essential.
What, really? The command pool is equal to the intelligence modifier, so it's probably not going to be 4 or 5 points.
Well, I think that's not necessarily true, because I believe that what I like about the Warlord is that you have to split between Wisdom and Charisma, and then also your physical stats. That's cool, because you kind of have to pick: do I want to be an Int Warlord or a Charisma Warlord?
Right.
But
yeah,
there's going to be someone who just kind of pumps that stat really high. Like if you're an Elf Warlord, you're going to have at least 3 points, probably 4 in your pool. So,
and assuming extra command's a feat that exists, that like the presidents make extra command a very, very attractive feat. I think more attractive than your standard feats are.
Extra grit or extra panache.
I've thought about this. I think the correct answer though is just not to have it. I think obviously it's. Like, overall, it's a good thing and everything like that, but the way I think the presences are better game design than having that feat in the game, and so I would rather just not have that feat.
That seems reasonable.
Also, I think I definitely do think in my mind there is an intelligence-based presence warlord, right, who doesn't utilize his orders as much as he utilizes his presences. Or so for some reason, some orders are really powerful, just baseline. Strike, right? Like, Strike is just a good order, whether or not you have Charisma. Charisma makes it better, obviously, because it pumps the damage, but, at the end of the day, it's whatever. Move is a terrible order if you have no Charisma, right? Move is basically worthless. And so I definitely see there being a paradigm of intelligence-based warlords whose main power is going to be high presence bonuses, and there are charisma-based warlords who are going to be powerful because they have the full suite of orders open to them. I think that's I like that dynamic, and I definitely think it's I don't know, it's something I was definitely working for.
Yeah, I think it's I think the scaling off of the points in the pool as a trade-off is a really cool mechanic. And basically, if you pump your int, your presences are gonna be really strong. But if you pump your charisma, your orders are gonna be a lot better. So I think that's a good trade-off. But as far as the impact, I think it's kind of overstated how much these individual benefits are very strong, and the fact that you can repeat them is certainly an interesting dynamic. But at the same time, it's like these aren't spells. Like you get more out of spells than you will ever get out of one of these, especially at higher levels, and I think that's okay.
Yeah, I also think that for instance, it used to be that the presence just tagged on for the whole round, but I think it's important that it falls off on the first roll.
Right.
So for instance, just to explain that a bit, Mango, for instance, let's say I give a strike order to my rogue and I have Guardian Presence up and his AC pumps from 16 to 20 at level 4, right? That's really powerful, right? If he's up against two guys, the first attack he takes, whether or not that attack hits or misses, the Presence bonus drops off.
Right.
And the second, so I think a one roll high potency bonus is pretty fine.
Yeah. I'm kind of with Buddy on that. I think it's one of those things where if you wanted to really game the number system, you're gonna have people who do that anyway.
That's true.
So,
that's fair.
So it's like this is no more different than someone making, I don't know, a Magus that you kind of use your int to carry you when your physical stats aren't that high.
Right.
You can do that. It's just I think the core design kind of prohibits that, and I think it's really interesting that that's an option rather than a optimization choice. So I think to that end, it's not as powerful as it might be.
Okay, I think I think playtesting will show it. We'll show what's up.
Yeah, that's also
I can see what you guys are saying. I don't know if I agree 100%, but I see it. Also, is this AC bonus typed?
I guess not, but that would be if I think that would actually probably be the best way to
nerf it if it needed to be nerfed.
Yeah, exactly, to bring it in line.
I agree with that.
If you make it
if you made it a dodge bonus, I think that kind of puts it in line with a lot of more traditional class features, because dodge bonuses stack with themselves, but they don't affect your flat-footed.
Yeah,
so it still lets you get ambush,
okay,
which
I feel
is
that.
I could see it either being a dodge bonus or like a shield bonus, because most people don't get a shield bonus from a lot of things.
I was actually thinking the same thing as Mango. I was thinking of a shield bonus, but the thing that I think Guardian Presence would get, I like Guardian Presence in the sense of I can give Guardian Presence to the wizard who just had a Goblin Close on him. Right. But I don't like Guardian Presence as a way to, make my tank unhittable. Right. And so, I think an overlap on shield bonuses like that would be pretty okay. But I also do kind of agree that flat-footed is I think that if it was typed, flat-footed is easier to get around, obviously, than a shield bonus.
touch attacks.
I don't really have.
Yeah.
Right. But I'm just saying, I as a GM, I know that I can flank this guy to negate his Guardian bonus if I have to.
I think something to consider is maybe making it a choice between a dodge or shield bonus. Then that's sort of also another option for the Warlord.
That's interesting.
Because then, it's do you want them to be less hittable by firearms, or do you want them to, not get, sneak attacked to death, kind of thing?
That is, that's pretty interesting, actually. I like that a lot.
Again, I think it can stand typed for the moment. I think playtesting will kind of bring out what's
that might be too complex, kind of thing.
Also think the other thing, I also think Guardian Presence is very good early, but it falls off very hard.
I agree.
By the time you pick up your second Presence, Guardian is almost kind of universally going to be the worst Presence on the list. And I think that that's okay. Especially because I also think that it's, I think specifically that Bravado and Berserker Presence are very, very good early pickups as well. So, I think that kind of interaction is also kind of working against it. But to get into that, I suppose, Bravado Presence is it's functionally the exact same, but instead of pumping the allies' AC, you pump the allies' next attack roll equal to the remaining points in the command pool.
I think I think Bravado Presence is just sort of a no-brainer. Like, Bravado and Berserker are both just there. Like, you know exactly what they're there for. One's for melee attack, or like for attacks, one's for damage.
Yep.
Cool. Like, that's great. I like that it's also not precision damage, so I think that's something that's kind of underutilized for Berserker Presence anyway.
Yeah. Like, you want to read off Berserker Presence, because I think they do kind of go hand in hand.
Yeah, sure. Berserker Presence, while in Berserker Presence, a Warlord uses the power action to buff a damage roll. It can apply to weapons or single target spells, and the bonus is equal to 2, plus the remaining points of command in the Warlord's command pool. The damage is multiplied on a critical hit.
Yeah.
Okay, so why the extra 2? Just out of curiosity.
I don't think I don't think damage numbers scale kind of on the same percentile almost as armor and AC, right? And so the extra 2 is just like a little bump to get to like get it into good territory. For instance, like let's say I'm a level 4 Warlord and I hit it at the top of the building. A +5 damage bonus is, like that's big and that's meaningful, and that feels more equivalent to a +3 AC bonus than a +3 damage bonus to me. You know what I mean?
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
I also think that using Berserker Presence at low command would be just garbage otherwise. +1 to AC, +1 to attack, that's fine, but +1 to damage is just like...
Not great.
Yeah, but +3 kind of, that's fine.
Makes it still worth it. Yeah.
That's where it feels right to me.
So, the only thing that pops into my mind is that, like, something like Strike, which gives you the charisma bonus to your damage on this free attack that you get from the Strike order, will also activate Berserker Presence if you're in Berserker Presence. Do you think that that's potentially problematic? It just seems like it could, like, early, like, let's say you take it at level 4 and you've got like a 3 charisma modifier and like 3 command points, right? Like you've just done everything in intelligence and charisma. That's 8 damage, an 8 damage bonus at level 4. Maybe I'm off by a point because you have to spend. Does the presence activate before or after you spend the point?
After the presence triggers after the you command the ability. I actually originally had it written a different way, where it was more like, so Skirmisher Presence is written this way where it only applies on the ally's turn. On an attack the ally takes on their turn. But I actually I popped that off when I moved, if you remember, the critical order from 7th level up to 15th level. What it does, I think the Warlord really wants a damage order in there, right? And he really doesn't have one in the early game, comparatively. And so that interaction is intentional because it's the best way that a Warlord can pump burst damage when his party needs it, which I think is good.
Like, I think that's also cool compared to, like, the Bard, where everyone's going to get this +2 for most of the fight, but the Warlord kind of gives you a +8 one round. Like, right. I think that's okay. I also
think that it's good, especially kind of hitting into later levels, to make it easier to proc your refunds on That's the Target, because you're giving yourself a bigger window to finish somebody off by with Berserker Presence, with Strike, etc. You understand? You get it.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. It seems like that all seems really good as far as like integration and scaling. Like, I think there's one of the big problems with martial classes in general is that they like figuring out how they scale is kind of difficult. Like the Gunslinger is a good example of something that scales really well, but at the same time, with gun training, you get your dex to damage with firearms with a new class of firearms whenever you get it. And in a game like Iron Gods, where each class of firearms is one very specific weapon type, I think that's reasonable, but it's like with fighters and weapon training. They get a +1 to a new group of weapons, but realistically, they're always going to be using the same group that they had in the first place. So I think having some sort of scaling mechanic where it's easier to get your pool back, so you have a big pool at low levels, it feels smaller at high levels, but you get it more often. I think that feels really good as a player.
Right. The other two presences, which were a little more nuanced, the first one is Skirmisher Presence. Empowering while using Skirmisher, or whenever you hit an order, it gives you a bonus to your movement equal to 1 square per point of the Warlord's command pool. The bonus can't be applied to 5-foot steps, but it can be applied to anything else, like a charge or a withdraw action. I'll probably put this in just because we've put it in a lot of the other movement stuff. It won't be able to exceed somebody's base or whatever. Oh, no. I guess it has to.
Right,
Yeah,
because
never
otherwise
mind.
there's no point of issuing it.
Otherwise, there's no point
Yeah.
of issuing it at all. Right.
I was really confused with Skirmisher Presence in the move order, until you kind of read them. But I was thinking like, oh god, you could just have the Warlord issue 2 move orders with Skirmisher Presence attached. And have...
To be honest, I almost feel like it deserves its own phrase right at the end, just to super clarify. Because technically speaking, written, it because it's only movement that they take on their turn.
Right.
But that's a detail that's very easily missed, I feel like. And somebody could look at it and... that's something that somebody could look at it and play that way for like 10 levels before people actually
and not realize it. Yeah,
see that preposition right at the end.
I also think what's kind of cool about Skirmisher Presence is like the fact that you set up with someone with like a strike order, right? And then next turn they can charge into a new target that they couldn't have charged to before.
Yeah.
So I think for your really like brutish kind of guys, it's a really, really interesting presence.
I really like Skirmisher Presence also for heavy melee. Something that I think is kind of criminal in Pathfinder is how hard heavy armor tanks your move speed and how hard it is to compensate for that. But Skirmisher Presence is really good at compensating for that, obviously, because...
So I'm going to add my same comment to Skirmisher Presence that I've added to your 2 move orders, which is you might want to cap it at base move speed again.
You wouldn't be able to cap it then it would be worthless. It would be worthless on a rogue, for instance, because they're already moving at base move speed.
No, I mean you might want to cap it at like
you can only double their move speed or something like that.
That way move plus like that way you can only get so like you can't make the plant creature move 40 feet in the round type of deal.
Actually, I'm kind of okay with that. Like, I think it's a little bit, brain stretching in the sense of like the fantasy of, because you're not using magic. It's just like your buddy tells you to move, so you can move better than you normally can. I see the logic in that, but I'm not quite sure which side of the fence
I almost feel as though
the
doubling is fine, because when the fuck are you ever going? You know what I mean? Like,
no, I think
literally just
fine.
there. It's literally just there to kill that plant move thing. Where a plant with 5-foot movement can't rocket across the battlefield. But even then, dude, like Skirmisher just is not that. Even a super pumped Skirmisher. Well, I guess actually a high level super pumped Skirmisher would probably get into like 6 or 7 territory.
Yeah, and I don't think it's. Like I said, I think it's fine. Like at doubling move speed, but I think even for like a creature with like a 20 base move speed, giving an extra 30 movement speed too. Is kind of extreme.
Yeah, okay, I'm with you. That convinces me. You're right. I think doubling the move speed is the right kind of cap for it. Anyway, and then the last presence is Warden Presence. Warden Presence, I actually worded this improperly. The power action gives you a bonus to you give a bonus to the ally to the save of the ally's choice, right? So the ally can choose, reflex or whatever, and the bonus only triggers on spells, and is consumed on the first thing. Honestly, this one is the weirdest, and I have a really hard time with it. I kind of feel like it being used on spells is too specific.
I
also
tend
feel
to agree
like
with that.
Not being used only on spells is too broad. I don't
No,
know that there's a great
because
middle
I
ground.
don't think that's true, because like I think there's if your Warlord is telling you, okay, don't stand in the fire, idiot, like, that's going to work just as well against, like, a landslide as it is against a fireball. Like, I think the thing with maybe having Warden Presence not apply to Fortitude saves and just have it be on Reflex and Will makes sense. Because, like, it's a little difficult to imagine that you can tell someone to, just suck it up, that poison's not hurting you that bad, kind of thing. But
although, now I've got this great image in my head of a Warlord being like, "Don't eat that," and slapping a poison biscuit out of somebody's hand.
Okay, actually,
that's the bonus from the Warden.
Stop eating that spoiled meat.
It's actually kind of hilarious.
That's
the mom archetype.
I think maybe for Warden Presence, because it's like a saving throw improvement, maybe it would be decent enough to split it into like presences for, each type of save or something like that. But I also don't think it's that big a deal, really, to have it just apply to saves in general, because it's kind of like you're only going to get one of these bonuses per turn.
Yeah,
so,
I don't think it's powerful enough that you need the distinction.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay.
But something that, like, I'm kind of interested in, this is just sort of, design idea, is that most of the, all the presences are based around using, are more or less geared towards melee and range characters. There's not a lot of benefit they do for casters except for the defensive ones. Defensive being Warden, Skirmisher, and Guardian. But I wonder if, like, there wasn't, maybe this is a discussion for an archetype, but I think another presence for something that helps spellcasters might be cool. Like, in the sense of...
Yeah, I definitely feel like Warlords should be most effective with martial classes, right? And I think, like, the base Warlord should be best with a rogue and a fighter kind of thing.
Okay, yeah,
but also
sense.
Applicable to, a cleric and a wizard. The hard part, I feel like, when it comes to presences specifically, is I feel like there's not a great all-around applicable thing. The only thing I could really think of was caster level checks. But that's just so specific. You know what I mean? That I don't.
I think maybe focusing in on like on what's like nukers, because they're everybody wants to play like the nuker, but they're power wise a little bit less powerful than your Gish mage. But like focusing in on that kind of thing, like like Berserker Presence adds damage.
But they already do that though, because Berserker Presence, Bravado Presence already apply to touch. It would apply to the attacks that you're making.
Absolutely. So. I meant in terms of like an archetype, something that would like allow Bravado Presence or Berserker Presence rather to apply to like to AOE spells, or like a feat or an archetype that lets you like increase spell pen, increase save DC somehow, or something like that.
Yeah, I feel that. Because the hard part was thinking about it in terms of save DCs and stuff like that. I really felt uncomfortable adding a Warlord presence or an order or something along the lines that allowed. For instance, I was thinking about a straight up order that allowed the Warlord to make a strike order, but for casting a spell. Right, like he gives the ally the immediate action to cast a spell, and I was like, "No fucking way! That's so good. Yeah. That's so powerful." Like,
I mean, if you wanted to nerf, like keep that down, it's weird because of the way that the command pool's set up. Because it would be really powerful early and fall off harder. Is something like limit the spell level based on like either like the number of points of the command pool, your charisma bonus, but that's still very, very powerful very early. If you made it a late order, it might work, but
yeah, maybe that's a pretty good point.
Field goal.
It could work at a late order.
Sorry about that. My brother just popped in.
So continuing on, I think the concept of presence is good. Some of the numbers might need a little tweaking, but I think, like, overall, this is a very Paizo kind of mechanic, and I like the fact that it synergizes very well with the orders, and it also gives you something to do when you don't want to use an order. So, like, you're always doing something Warlord-y, for lack of a better term, but it's not going to be, like, you don't just sink all your resources into that first fight. which I like.
I definitely agree with that. Okay, well,
Outmaneuvered.
the next couple of class features. The first one is outmaneuvered at level 5. Basically, whenever the Warlord and one of his allies threaten the same target, the Warlord can replace his strength or dexterity modifier with his intelligence modifier for his attack roll. If the target is flanked, the Warlord also gains his intelligence bonus to his damage roll. To be honest, this is just a little bit of...
this is cool. Like
it's just a little steroid so that if a Warlord has to beat stick, he's not garbage at it. Because
I also like from like a multi-class standpoint that if you do have like, you know, a Magus Warlord or like a Swashbuckler Warlord mix or something like that, it gives them that nice little extra boost, so it kind of helps them overlap a little better. Like
yeah, I feel that, especially because it's at level 5.
Right.
If you're multi-classing 5 levels deep in Warlord with another class like
it's
that.
okay, yeah. Like I think it's a really good design. It's simple. It does what it's supposed to do, and it doesn't like let you entirely obviate your 2 of your stats, right? Yep. Like that's kind of the criticism a lot of people have for dex to damage, but I think this is a really good implementation because it's very
people like me who hate dex to damage.
Well, I'm just saying I think it's a very elegant solution. I like it. I think it's flavorful. I think it's simple.
I think the name might need to change. Specifically because it applies to attack rolls and damage and not to combat maneuvers, and it's called outmaneuvered.
Technically, maneuvers that require it would apply to maneuvers that require attack rolls. So like disarm and stuff like that.
But it applies to everything instead of just specifically maneuvers. So I do agree that it is a little bit confusing. Yeah, I mean,
you could keep with like what is it, focus shot that lets you add dex to a ranged attack.
Yeah,
call it like out focused. I don't know.
Oh,
yeah, whatever. Anyway, the next ability is Bulwark at level 9. The Warlord
borrowed from the Knight.
It is. Yeah, you were the one that told me about
this. I know, but all
adjacent
like
squares to the Warlord are considered difficult terrain for his enemies. Oh man,
it's
great. It's such a great mechanic,
and it's so simple because it denies 5-foot steps.
It's and it's so light. Like it's not a power sink. It's a tank focus. This is one of those things that really types the Warlord into being a tank. I think is getting Bulwark. To be honest, I kind of want to give it earlier at some point, but early levels are pretty full.
Yeah, I think it's good where it is because, like, if you put it earlier, it becomes this risk of dipping. Like, one thing you might do is, like, switch, outmaneuvered and Bulwark, but even then, it's like...
Yeah, I think there's also an archetype that gets it early. Like there's
oh yeah, that's fair. Yeah, I definitely think that there's like a full tank Warlord archetype out there that wants to get Bulwark at like level 3.
I think I want to get to archetypes because I've got a bunch of really cool ideas for that, or I think they're cool anyway.
But then we've got improved squad tactics, which is at 13th level. As a standard action, so squad tactics is the teamwork feat sharing thing where the Warlord can pretend to be, to possess a teamwork feat to help out an ally. Improved squad tactics says that as a standard action, the Warlord can adopt any teamwork feat for which he is, using squad tactics for a minute. It is, to be honest, I literally was just like, I have nothing to give the Warlord at 13th level. What can I give the Warlord at 13th level? And it is, it's this. It's kind of like backwards tactician.
I might say that, like, I think adopting it for a minute is too long. I might do it for 1 round per point in command pool or something like that instead, just because that way it's not like, with the tactician ability on, the Cavalier, it's like a daily ability. And even if like you can adopt it for a minute, that's, not that powerful at level 13, but conceptually it really intrudes on that design space.
I think if you make this a daily ability, I think a minute's fine, because a minute makes it like a fight long, which I think is the appropriate space for this.
So I think like an at will, it's just not great.
Yeah.
Interesting. I think, the thing that I think of as being prohibitive about this is the action. It is a Warlord using his standard action for an entirely selfish thing, right? He doesn't help He
Yeah,
doesn't help his allies
it's-
at all by
no,
adopting
I mean-
this, and so that's kind of why I was like,
That's-
take it for a minute.
That's fine. I think I get where you're coming from. I still think that it's like design space intrusive, and that's bad. Like, there's already some space that this kind of overlaps with the Cavalier and the Inquisitor, and that's good, right? Like, I think this delivers very well as a concept on what it's supposed to. But at the same time, I think that it's a little unfair to give them this ability kind of out of the ether when Cavaliers have been building it up over time. And to that end, I think it's probably best to make it work for, a shorter period of time or have a limited number of uses.
Yeah, I think I'd definitely go with the limited number of uses. I think having it work, because I think Buddy's right that the
Wow,
that
I'm
the
kind of
action
surprised.
economy-
I just didn't think that it was that. I don't really think of it as being that powerful. But
It's not the power, it's the concept. Like, okay, Cavaliers get like something like 3 uses of Tactician by the time they're at the same level as this Warlord.
right,
and
but Tactician
all of
gives
those
it to
abilities
his
last
whole
for 1
party.
minute.
Right.
Right.
Everyone in his party gets a new feat for 1 minute, and that
But the
seems
thing is,
just
like,
so much more
you're
powerful than.
No, because it's really not, because you're executing the same thing with the squad tactics ability, in the sense like people stock up their own teamwork feats, and then you're already granting them that benefit, whereas like the Cavalier can do that only a limited number of times per day.
Yeah, and the other half of that is that Tactician seems strong because it gives it to everybody, but most
in
teamwork
reality,
feats
yeah,
don't
they're
apply
only
to
useful
everybody.
for some section of the party. Whereas like with squad tactics, everyone can take the best teamwork feat for their class and then always have it. Whereas the Tactician Cavalier doesn't get that benefit. Like the outbound usage is a lot lower. For instance, like, okay, if the Cavalier can grant a teamwork feat for a minute 3 times per day, and they give outflank, that's going to be really useful for your melee characters. But compared to a one level lower Warlord who has their ranged character with enfilading fire, their melee character with outflank, another melee with precise strike or whatever, that's they're always benefiting from those teamwork feats all the time. And then on top of that, to let the Warlord kind of benefit from that also unlimited, it really kind of shits on the Cavalier. And maybe that's okay. Like, this is designed to be a support class rather than the Cavalier, which is ostensibly something that fights kind of on its own. But I just think it's way too intrusive.
See, this is kind of almost feeling like an argument to to just replace the class feature in general. I'm kind of whatever on this class feature just because I literally made it to fill space or whatever. And I think that it's, to a certain extent, I think that it's good that it's completely selfish, right? Like, I think it's important that a Warlord have options that aren't. He has some options that help him.
Something
right?
that might be better, that I think, is maybe having an ability that lets you kind of copy a teamwork feat from an ally to another ally.
I was thinking about that too, but I eventually got rid of it.
Yeah, not at will. I think like a couple times per day. Like once at 13th level again. Like
Or
I think,
or maybe something like you can, like, a couple times per day you can designate an ally as having squad tactics, like, as counting, not even giving them the feat, just having them count as having the feat for the purposes.
Oh, I like that. Yeah, I like that
too. Actually, I think that might be the better.
I think like even having that one at will might be okay.
I think having that at will is fine.
Just because
especially for a standard action.
You also might want to be just for 1 round though. If it's at will, just have because then you have to keep granting that ability to someone to make them a focal point. I think that's okay if it lasts for 1 round, but it's at will. That seems to be a reasonable sort of.
I definitely agree. If it lasted any more than 1 round, it would violate my rule of short duration,
right?
So to speak. So yeah, okay. The next one is improved outmaneuver, which is at 14th level. A Warlord, he just becomes better at doing the old outmaneuver. Instead of his strength or dexterity, he just adds his intelligence modifier to all targets that both he and an ally are threatening. and when the Warlord flanks with an ally, that ally gains the intelligence modifier to his damage rolls as well. So
Okay.
it's
Yeah.
just a numbers pump on it.
Yeah, that's fine.
You know, honestly, I don't imagine that it will actually. I kind of doubt that any Warlord would really have enough in strength or dex to make that really broken. And because it only unlocks at 14th level, it's like.
I think the real strength for improved outmaneuver might be just that it applies to your full attack, so you can kind of make that choice to swap. You know, instead of giving an order to an ally, if you can get more damage per round out by making a full attack instead of having it only applied to a single strike, I think that's. That seems pretty okay to me.
Yeah, I'm definitely with you there. Improved Bulwark is at 17th level. A Warlord, because when an enemy that the Warlord threatens attacks somebody that does not target the Warlord, they get a -2 on that attack roll.
I think that's really weak. I think that's really weak for the level. Something that I think might be more interesting is like if someone's standing in the Warlord's range and they attack someone other than the Warlord regains a point of command.
Yeah,
I think
I agree with that.
That would be great.
Yep.
I think at level 17,
God.
that's pretty reasonable compared to like -2 on attacks, which is relatively trivial.
Hell, I think
Like,
I think
so fucking good.
I think you could give it both and it'd still be fine.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean,
I feel that definitely.
Yeah. I think the recovery when they attack someone else is pretty reasonable.
And then the last one, the capstone ability for the Warlord at 20th level.
It's called Paragraph, the ability.
It's called Supremacy Presence.
Oh.
Basically, it's a 6th
That's
presence.
yeah.
Where he gains the benefit of all 5 presences at once, but all of the command to his abilities are doubled, right? So honestly, this is broken out the ass.
It's a 20th level ability. Nobody
capstone, right?
cares.
Like, yeah, dude, everybody's
it's like level 20. Nobody gives a shit.
Oh, okay. It's actually not that long, but you have Mark's comments pinned to the bottom of this document. You might want to erase them.
Oh, fair enough. I will erase them. Ha 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 ha. And we'll probably edit this out of the podcast. Ha 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 ha.
No, but I actually, I wasn't here on the first day, but I think giving it full BAB is a mistake. I think giving it good will saves and medium BAB makes more sense, but that's kind of my opinion.
The reason I did full BAB is because the D10 hit dice. I think he has to be really tanky. I also think that because he's not powering, he's not going to be attacking all that much. Kind of the base attack bonus being highs. Well, I mean, first of all, it's not really that useful. Because the majority of his standard actions are going to be other things. And it's also because he's not pumping into strength or dexterity anyway. It's not like it's going to... it's just making it not shit when he attacks stuff. But the real reason I did it was for the D10 hit dice. Yeah. I don't think he can be like the melee off tank unless he has a D10 hit dice. Otherwise, he's just going to be too squishy and get blown up.
Well, you could do D10 and medium. Like the Barbarian has D12 and has full BAB. So, like, there are classes that do decouple that. And I think because it's designed to be a little tankier, that's okay to give it a higher hit die than its BAB would indicate.
I think Barbarian is literally the only example of that. My understanding was that
it's an example of that because it goes above the maximum, right? Like, it's not like you're going to do a 1.25 BAB.
But what you're saying is have it be a 3/4 BAB with a D8 hit dice?
No, with a D10. Like D10
D10 hit dice.
Yeah, I think that's a little more reasonable than to compensate, give them good will saves because this guy is supposed to be, really headstrong and kind of collected, which is.
Oh yeah, we actually talked about this on the last cast. I really did. I had him having good will saves, but I felt like I needed to shave power off, so I clipped.
I think shaving the BAB bonus off and leaving the hit points intact is good, just because
I'm going to disagree. I think the BAB is more thematic, and I don't think it's that powerful on him. Like I don't think he's pumping strength.
So. The thing is, it's also, from my perspective, for multi-classing, which is always going to be a, point of contention with me, is, if you dip the Warlord or whatever, you're always getting the full benefit of doing so. Like, in the sense, if you make a rogue Warlord for, a crime boss or something like that, that's cool, but it's, I think it's not that bad. I'm not going to, harangue on it too much, but I think it would be better with a medium BAB, but that's, that's kind of where I'm at. I think the tangential benefits it provides are very powerful compared to, the core benefits.
In the last podcast, I kind of talked about how I think it's right on the edge. I think it's fine to give him the full BAB, but I see your point. I think that's another thing that'll come out more in play. I think it's such a fine distinction that'll come out in play testing better.
Yeah, that makes sense to me.
But I kind of wanted. Did we have anything else we want to say about Supremacy Presence? We kind of just glossed over.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah,
Supremacy
that's true.
Presence it's good. It's
just
fine.
normal. It's whatever. The other thing I wanted to bring up with you guys before we get into archetypes and stuff is I kind of came up with 2 additional refund mechanics that I like better thematically. I like them. I straight up like them better than That's the Target. I think it kind of fulfills, and I feel like Mango is going to like them and Mark isn't. But I have 2 of them. The first one is very mechanical. It's a variation on That's the Target. It would be an order just like That's the Target, but instead of proccing the refund when the target drops and being able to use it as an immediate action, it would only proc a refund if 2 different allies both triggered the mark, if that makes sense. So what you do is you would place the mark on as a standard action, the first, and then if one person attacks it, fine, they get the damage, but it's a waste of command kind of thing. But if 2 people do it, you refund command back to you.
I think that's okay.
I feel like that. I like it better because it really powers up kind of the
and this works.
battle leader.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, cool.
I think that's
the other
good.
one, which
Well,
I actually
can you give me the full description of that again? Is it only, you said it's something like only on the immediate action or not on the immediate action?
No, you no longer get to take. So That's the Target has to have the immediate action because otherwise it's impossible to get off correctly, right? It's just too weak.
Well, I don't think that's true. I think you could be like hit that thing and then have the party be like, okay, well we're hitting that thing now.
Right, but the thing, because I initially conceived of it as an immediate action and only tacked on the standard action later, it is nerfed to the point where it's only as strong as it is kind of on the immediate action. This one is always a standard action. It always costs 1 point of command. So if you flub it, right, if you don't get it off, it's a big command sink.
Okay, yeah, okay. Sorry, I got it backwards in my head.
Right,
that sounds great.
Yeah. Okay. So this is the one I like most mechanically, but the second one I love this one thematically, and I feel like you guys might not. But anyway, it would not be orders. It would be a new first level ability, which would be called coordination, which is that any ally within 30 yards of you can coordinate with the Warlord as a standard action. The ally gains the benefit of the Warlord's currently active presence and refunds the Warlord 1 point of command. So just like the Warlord is dipping his action economy, the allies dip their action economy to refill his or to refill his command or whatever. And then coupled with that, you would get a couple later, you would get an ability called like a battle plan, which is, in my mind, it's some kind of like skill check. It's like it would have to be like a skill check, which is that if you and your party spend a minute, preparing for an encounter, the Warlord can make like a skill check with like, I don't know, like knowledge history or profession soldier, whatever is applicable. I don't fucking know. And if he succeeds on that check, he refills all of his command.
I think all of his command is too powerful.
I actually like those abilities. I think they would be better as archetype abilities, though. But I think those 2 are very good. I think
I was really brainstorming ways because I really don't like That's the Target.
Something you might want to do for Battle Command is have it X per day. I think like X per day might be better. If it's like just like in the sense of like having it be once or twice per day between combat, you can refill your command pool. I think that's cool. I think that's fine.
Yeah.
But like it has
kind of like that.
But it has to be something that you can't spam. That's the big thing, is like you can't have it so that between every fight you always go in with full command.
Yeah,
well, that's the thing, because the idea, because that's the reason why I feel like it needs to be a skill check, and I also think it's important for it to be a skill check with like a relatively high base. Like in my mind, this is something like 15 plus the CR of the encounter. You know what I mean? Like a really high base
that's
thing.
That's kind of arcane.
No,
yeah,
I think that,
I mean,
I think that like not having a check for it and just having it limited number of times per day makes sense, because then you're not kind of pressing people into taking certain non-combat skills.
Yeah.
Well, the other thing I like about that is it allows you to, if you scout the fight, you get circumstance bonuses on that roll, right? So if
Okay.
If you do a battle plan into an empty door, well, that's kind of meaningless, and it's like you're that is less useful than if you have, a rogue or like a wizard who can scry across the door, or, whatever. That would be a shitty use of scry, but whatever, in order to give you the information. Maybe you could only use it when you get that information.
I think
right?
having
If you
it
have a
not
way to,
I think having it not be a check, like I think that the certain amount of like circumstance bonuses, like and putting that on the GMs to determine, I think is not great. I think something like, the GM determine is if they can reasonably plan out the battle, or like planning into an empty door is, outside, planning into an empty door probably shouldn't give it, but like, giving the GM that kind of guidance to be like, well, if they can survey the battlefield and get the jump on them, then they can activate this ability without a skill check, I think is better than trying to be like, well, if they plan into an empty door, they can still make the roll versus a secret number that and like, how do you deal with a situation where they plan into an empty door with nothing on the other side, right? The CR of that encounter is 0. He refills his command pool because he happened to check into the empty room.
Is super true. Yeah, I mean, obviously these are very off the cuff ideas, which is kind of why I wanted to bring them up. I like the one with I like it being something that you can only trigger when you have, when you have information to go on.
Yeah.
But I do think, I do like it. I also like it as like a mid-level ability. This is an ability that you get at level 8. That feels
makes
good,
sense to me.
I think.
Yeah.
I don't think it's good at level 1 or 2 or 3 kind of thing.
I think Mark's idea of having it be like maybe once per day at level 8, and then like that can scale up a little bit, and then have it be like you have to have full, like, you have to be able to plan for the battle, and you spend some amount of minutes planning for that battle, and then you could even like expand that into feats, be like, rapid tactician, you can use that ability with a shorter amount of time or something like that. I think that's the way to go with it, rather than trying to make it a skill check, because you're already kind of forcing a skill.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree that skills are a poor way to do it.
Yeah, like you said, you're already forcing a skill with combat medic. I think forcing 2 skills is a big no-no, especially with a class that gets a relatively low base 2+ intelligence modifier, which will be fairly sizable, but I think taking up like a third to a half of your skill points with essentially forced choices is bad.
All right.
I think it wouldn't be the worst thing in the world if you had it apply to like a million different skills, but I do agree that it's just the worst implementation. Off the top of my head.
So after this, we don't have a ton of time left. I kind of wanted to go back over orders, but maybe that's something we can do at a different time. Everybody seems to be really excited to talk about archetypes, so do we want to do that instead?
It's fine.
Yes, please.
All right, Mark, since you seem bursting at the seams, let's go around in a circle. Mark, why don't you start with your first idea for an archetype, and we'll each share an idea until we run out of time.
I think so the Despot Warden would be something based more around like betrayal feats, in the sense of like it's an inversion on the orders. Instead of benefiting your allies, you kind of penalize them to boost yourself up, or something like that, or like you throw people under the bus to.
Fucking Christ!
Yeah.
Holy shit!
So.
Oh my god! Oh my god!
Right.
Wow.
So I think something like that would be pretty cool. I think the Commissar Warlord would be more of like a mage kind of like defender sort of thing, but like their whole thing is more or less based around like giving orders to your spellcasting allies so they don't go crazy or whatever. Like it's based on like the 40k idea, but they could be focused around boosting up your mages, which is really strong, but could be kind of interesting like in an in-world sense.
Yeah.
Then I think the Martyr Warlord would be like a tank, like really, really tank focused. So instead of issuing commands, they're more about like issuing taunts and stuff like that. So like there could be some overlap with them in the Despot. And I think like a more stealth focused Warlord for like kind of like a Navy SEAL style leader, where it's like, all right, we're going to go in, we're going to do these things with like combat engineering kind of stuff would be also pretty neat. Maybe something akin to the Investigator or something like that. I think that would be cool. Yeah. Like those are my 4 kind of things that I think are workable.
Yeah, I think that something like some of my days were something like a general type aspect, which is kind of that I said it in the first podcast, but like a more ranged warlord with kind of like the ability, this kind of like higher level view. Maybe kind of give it some NPC-esque abilities that kind of like benefit into mass combat or something like that, because that feels like a natural extension of those kind of abilities. Along with like this kind of standard idea of like a tactician warlord, where he just kind of has a tactician ability, and maybe you give this original outflank or improved squad tactics to him, because then he can take it from an ally and spread it to everybody else. It takes him 2 actions to do that, but that's like, I think that's an appropriate trade off for two rounds worth of actions if you really need it in the situation. Did I have something else? I thought there was another idea I had for something along the lines of like kind of in the same kind of vein as the despot, something where their abilities, instead of boosting your allies, is mostly just like screwing with the enemy. That might overlap with like witch hexes too much. And then I had an idea, I think, for like a single mechanic, which was kind of like something. I don't know if this would fit into a particular archetype, maybe like a spirit warlord or something, but something like an ability that lets you count as your ally. If the cleric wants to heal one of the allies, she can touch you, and you count as your ally for that, or something like that, to kind of give that kind of battlefield
I get it. So you basically work as like a node on the battlefield.
Yeah.
Interesting. The big one that I wanted to do was a full tank warlord who kind of trades out orders for in my mind he would be a little bit like the Warden from 4th edition, where it's still very enemy focused with a lot of CC and stuff like that, but all of his orders, he doesn't really give orders to his allies. All of his orders are a little bit more like the Swashbuckler, a little bit more like the Gunslinger, and that there's stuff that affects himself, but instead of doing more damage, it's a lot of CC kind of stuff along those lines. I also had this idea for a warlord. It would be a little bit like this commissar that you're describing, but it'd be like a version of the warlord that's like the Stygian Slayer, who has a couple
that uses
of
shadow
casting. Well, it wouldn't be shadow necessarily. It would just be magic, right? I like the idea of like a warlord that can use spell-like abilities to teleport around the battlefield in a certain way.
I feel like
warlord
the warden concept would be good.
Well, or like a warlord that could use spell-like abilities for things like what's that shield that gives you deflect? Shield of Faith, that kind of stuff. Not necessarily Shield of Faith, but just like those kinds of things as spell-like abilities. I also like the idea of having a warlord with a mount who is cavalry focused, almost not even really as a PC archetype, but just I really like the idea of like an NPC or like a villain kind of running around with his like group of cavalry, just like absolutely wrecking people with like cavalry focused orders.
Yeah, actually that's pretty, like you could I think build like a whole character, like an archetype around that, something like this warlord, one of his orders lets you use a mounted combat more than X times, improves the number of times you can use it per round type of deal.
Yeah, exactly. I think that there's a lot of kind of opening for that. To be honest, I really don't have any plans on writing any of these archetypes myself. I'd like to finish, the Warlord and publish it, so to speak, and then if people want to come in and do archetypes, that's kind of up to them. The thing that I want to do is add in a good suite of feats, like class feats, to flesh out.
How do you feel about signature order?
I think that's good. I want there to be signature order.
I think we need to at some point then go back and talk about the orders some more. We're kind of reaching the end of our time now. But talk about the orders some more, because I think one of the the more I think about it, one of the overarching things that need to be adjusted about the orders are their costs, because right now they're all costed at 1. And I think that you could make some of them more expensive.
Yeah, I definitely think that some of them are kind of on the line of being worth 2. But
I'm
personally
happy with all of them being 1. I think it's a really simple kind of execution. Like, I think that it might be a little strong, but I think it's okay.
Yeah, I mean, I've kind of designed all of the classes with the idea of, well, it's kind of broken for, like a warlord to have signature order strike, for instance. But I actually don't think that that's true. I think signature order, like 1 feat for that and having that be that, I don't know, that feels fine to me. I don't think that that's broken in any way. I think that it's good design because I do think that without signature order, you run the risk of just like people getting their command pools absolutely decimated all the time because they're so low, comparatively speaking. I don't know. It's just something I've been thinking about.
I get that, but I feel like if you think that everybody has to take signature order, then you need to do some adjustment to the order pool. Like, I don't think any feat should ever feel mandatory.
Well, I don't think it is mandatory. I think it's mandatory for. But if I'm a warlord with the high charisma, low intelligence kind of archetype, signature order is very, very good for me.
Yeah.
If I'm the empower sort of warlord, where I'm high intelligence, low charisma, and I'm all about my presences, I don't think signature order makes a lot of sense.
Okay, fair enough. I think there's some more design to go into that. Maybe we'll do it as part of a future episode. But I think we're just about out of time at this point. Any closing thoughts, guys?
I think the Warlord's actually like very well designed. I think the connections to the Swashbuckler and Gunslinger are really solid, and aside from a few minor tweaks and concerns, I think it's I'd let a player play it.
Well, I'm going to hold you to that because I look forward to seeing it in some form of that. To be honest, I almost want to bring it up for Hell's Rebels, but I really don't actually because I don't want to tempt anyone into. Everyone's already locked in their classes and everything like that, and I don't want to tempt anybody out of that. And on top of it, I really do feel like it needs a little bit. It needs more fine tuning.
I think it needs to be.
It needs some one-shot play tests.
Yeah,
that makes sense to me. I'm down for. I think that makes a lot of sense.
Some one-shot play tests with people who are actively trying to break the class as hard as possible.
So basically, any of us,
right?
Yeah.
Except the problem is we're gonna have like a 3 warlord party, and it's not gonna work out because we're like everybody use more actions, and it's not.
Yeah. I don't know. Do you guys have any? Are you guys gonna get into? Do you have any classes that you wanna homebrew? Are there gonna be any additions to the Warlord for our some derps talk about games pantheon of homebrew?
I've got a few ideas, but none I really want to talk about right now.
Yeah, maybe in the future.
Honestly, I think in general, this is like one of the few niches that there's not already a class for. The other being like a gadget-based rogue type character. So I think all things considered, there's not a lot I can really add that's not out there already, and that's good though. Like I think that's really cool that people have kind of designed into that space.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I think our topic for next week's episode is going to be, because it's going to be the last episode of the year, our games of the year, favorite stuff of the year. But otherwise, I guess we're good. I guess we're donezo. We out there.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. It's been a pleasure.
Of course. If you guys want to watch us play these games, you can watch us at twitch.tv/SomeDerpsPlayGames. Tomorrow will be, I shouldn't say tomorrow because this podcast is definitely not going up tonight. But on Mondays, it's Rune Lords, GM'd by Mark, where Buddy and I play in, along with some other folks. On Tuesday, it's Iron Gods, which is GM'd by our friend Nick. And it's and then the 3 of us are players in that game, along with a couple other people. And I'll have links in the description to anything. If you want to email us and tell us how terrible or how great the Warlord is, you can email us at somederpsplaygames@gmail.com. And you can also comment on the SoundCloud. I read them all 0 of them. And and I think that's about it. Did you want to pimp anything, Buddy or Mark?
I guess we can announce this officially, which is that the first kind of one-shot intro session for Hell's Rebels will be played on January 2nd, which is a Saturday, so the day after New Year's. It will be, it'll be streamed on the channel just like all of our other ones. We probably won't start up. It's not like it's going to be a regular Saturday thing. It's just I want to get that intro session out there so that when Iron Gods kind of closes down, we can really hit the ground running. But yeah.
Yeah, I need to finish out my character sheet for that.
I added all of the noble families, so you can read about your pop.
Oof, Jaltero.
It was somebody Jaltero.
Is this buddy lore, or is this official, or is this Galarian lore?
But this is buddy lore. They actually didn't give it. I'm 4 APs deep. I'm 4 books deep in the AP, and I kind of expected, because they teased it. They said that, they were going to go into more detail in these noble houses. I personally cut 2 noble houses that I didn't like and replaced them with noble houses that I do like. But Jaltero wasn't on that list of cuts, obviously. And I thought they were going to give me the information. I thought that they were going to give me more to go on, but they really didn't. They just kind of gave like a little it's not even a stat block. It's just like a little block with like a couple of adjectives to describe the so I extrapolated my own kind of personality and backstory and all of that kind of stuff from there.
All right. Well, until next time, dear listener. Mark. Did you want to?
No, I'm good.
All right.
I'm good.
Well, then, until next time, dear listeners. This has been some Derps Talk About Games.